Hello, everyone, and welcome back to part 2 of Mastering Midlife, How to Thrive When the World Asks the Most of You with Monica Day. We have been talking about sensuality, intimacy, relationship, and trying to get to sex, but we haven't quite been able to get there. So now we're in part 2. What we learned in part 1 with Monica was the thought of getting in touch with our body and our sensuality and our feelings and in sensations. And she moved us through to learning about how our bodies are changing and brought us home to the part where midlife is actually the most powerful part of life, because we're not having sex and we're not having relationships for the purposes of procreating. We can relax into this next phase, and it's even more powerful. So I welcome my friend and colleague, Monica Day, who I would introduce as a relationship coach, but she's not quite just a relationship coach. I would say an aliveness coach. I would say a person who helps people find their innermost awesomeness, but I can't even put her in a box because she's so amazing. And if you listen to part 1, then you know what I'm talking about. Monica, thanks for coming back.
Thank you so much, Mark. I'm glad that we have a chance to keep going.
So you left us with the juiciness of midlife and how all this is available to us because we don't have the drumbeat of procreation. So take us first. So now take us to the next steps. You're working with people, and we're finally accepting our bodies. We're chewing our food, and we feel the food in our mouths, and we feel the shower, and we understand this stuff. Now where do we go?
Yeah. So one of the things we didn't talk about the first half that I'll start with now is I have a book called Play Wild, Stay Safe.
It's amazing.
And the guide to giving and receiving. And in that book, the very first thing I say is I put a warning. Trigger warnings are very popular now. And I say, warning, intimacy is inevitable. And that is really what happens next when you start to go down this road is the depth of intimacy that becomes available when you expand your physical capacity and you have access to deeper emotional capacity. What you get is a form of intimacy that is literally orgasmic.
So keep going. Tell us more.
How do we get there? So it's interesting. Where people go to when they want to have good sex often is they go to the sex shop, right? Or they try different positions. They go to the Kama Sutra and they try to put themselves in all these positions. Like they're going to somehow get in some kind of position. And I'm not saying there's anything.
Been there, done that, bought the t-shirt.
Exactly. Right. But again, that's a very goal-oriented practice, right? We're going for orgasms, for multiple orgasms, for blah, blah, blah. Take the goal off of your sex. Let sex become a goalless practice so you have to strip everything out of your sexual vernacular, right? You have to say, we don't call it finishing anymore because we came. Did you finish? I'm never done. None of us are ever done. You're always in an orgasmic cycle. So you have to kind of recognize that and always be sort of engaged with it. This is where the fun comes in. So in my book, there's 12 exercises in the back of the book. And they're, some of them are very simple. Write a love letter to each other. Tell them everything that you love about them, right? You had asked me before, why do people come to me? They come to me because they're bored. They come to me because they're so bored they're about to leave, but it's not financially prudent to do so. So they come to me, right? People have forgotten how to engage in intimate practices with one another. They stop playing. They stop appreciating one another. They move into this thing of romance. You're in the doghouse, then you think you're going to show up with flowers and candy. I'm so anti-romance, which I know seems weird.
And that's my trap. I'm missing romance, and I'm constantly in my relationship saying, I want more romance. So I'm barking up the wrong tree.
Yeah, it's not, romance isn't actually, you're asking for something and you're using the wrong language for it.
Great. Educate me, please.
I'm guessing when you ask for more romance, what you want is you want to be seen. You're probably asking for attention, and you're asking for a different caliber and quality of attention than what you get.
That resonates really deeply. You're right.
Yeah. And it's one of the reasons why we ask for romance and we get it and we're still not satisfied. Romance is like the fast food version of deep intimacy. And it satisfies us for about as long as a Big Mac.
Got it.
Yeah.
So what I love is, so in my relationship, one of the things we're doing is leaving notes for each other, just as a fun practice.
Absolutely. That's a lovely one.
And that to me is a little romance, a little romantic.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not where we what you're saying is that's not where we stop. That's the gateway now to the intimacy. So keep going. This is
Exactly. So it's not about leaving a note. It's about, what do I get from the note? I get some of your attention. I feel seen by you. I give you some of that. So it's like, how can I keep going with that? And so attention is a really big one. And that's why I say, take the goal off. Don't put the attention on the orgasm. Put the attention on the person, right? And it's another reason why I say, take the judgment language out. Focus more on your sensation, on the quality of sensation between you, right? Expand how much you can feel, both
I
on a
feel so,
physical
just
level and
listening to you
also on
talk,
an
I feel
emotional
so
level.
alive. I feel like I feel what you're saying.
Yes. It's part of what dies in us when we're in a goal-oriented culture, is that we become goal-oriented about everything. And this part of our life actually dies when put in a goal-oriented bubble. So we have to get that part off of it. We also have to take off of it, we do it in this time, in this place, and you're the top and I'm the bottom, and you lead and I follow, and like, so I take all of that. In my book, it's like you're changing places. You're
There's a lot of
playing
identity in that, though. So
so much
again,
identity.
as you said, letting go of that youth. There's so much in identity in how I've done sex and how I've done
Yes.
intimacy and who I've been and what I want my partner to be and how I need them to be, and then the resentment when they're not that way. And this relationship is not going to work because I love them in all these other areas, but I need this. Oh, you just opened up a whole can of worms and possibility.
I had someone contact me once, and it was a friend. It was actually someone I had briefly dated, and I knew he was in a new relationship, and it was great. And you see this on Facebook, and you're like, good for him. And he contacted me privately, and he was having a crisis. He and his girlfriend were having a crisis. This is also when people contact me. And
Hold on, I'm going to ask you to just fix your mic again.
okay. Oh, yep.
This is live television, friends.
Oh my goodness. Okay. It's not wanting to cooperate. Okay. How's that? Is that any better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So I had a friend contact me, and he was having a crisis with his girlfriend. And the crisis was that she was no longer getting off with oral sex. Now, this was a huge challenge for both of them because he considered this his superpower. And I can vouch. That's why he called me. He's like, I'm like, I know. And this was for her the quote unquote only way that she had ever gotten off. So the two of them were lost, right? What do we do now? And I ended up writing, back to them, and I said, I called the email. I said, when your orgasm isn't where you left it.
Mm.
Right. And this is part of what we do. We're such creatures of habit and pattern, right? A plus B equals C, bada bing, A plus B equals C, bada bing. You know? And then one day, you know, you put A and B together and you're like, hello. This happens to us a lot at this time in our lives. And we panic. It's like it's a crisis. And we keep trying to go back to something. And I tell people all the time, you can't go back. There's no going back. So what they had to do was really go back to like a place of discovery. It doesn't matter how many times you have put your hands on that person's body, how many times you have played their genitals like, you know, the expert, right, of that instrument and made it sing. You got to start from square one, because something has changed. And you have to take the judgment off of it. You have to take the fear, the shame, all that stuff, and be like, okay, what do we got now? Because I guarantee you'll find a new spot. You'll find a new pattern. You won't, but that's where you have to be willing to go into the unknown. You have
So the
to
highlighter
draw.
here is the highlighter is here, letting go and experimenting, and playing with each other to go into places that we've never gone before, which in all of life is really tough, especially in the bedroom.
It is. And as soon as you said experimenting, I was like, oh, red flag on the field. I got to say something about that.
Good.
Sometimes when you say experimenting, what people think that means is that you have to accelerate the intensity. So experimenting means, I don't know, we got to go and buy, I can say words, right? We got to go buy the bigger dildo. We got to, right? You got, you got to.
I had tripling on this podcast. Anybody who listened to that first podcast is not going to blush from here on in.
Okay. So, right. That's why when you go to the toy stores, the sex toy stores, like they're so overwhelming. I'm going to tell you a very quick little story, because sometimes people get a little intimidated dating me. That's unfortunately a thing that happens in my life. And so I was with a guy, we're getting intimate. I'm at his house. I've known him for a while. We did, you know, and next thing I know, he goes rooting around in some drawer or whatever. And he comes out, he's got some kind of dildo thing that is colors and it moves around and it's got all these things, and he's got nipple clamps and and I was overwhelmed. I was like, what are you doing? And, you know, out of his wanting to, and he was in a midlife crisis, I might add, out of kind of wanting to impress me, he just pulled every trick out of the book, and I was completely overwhelmed. And so I basically had to teach him how to make out again, and we just made out the rest of the night. So sometimes experimenting doesn't mean I got to jack it all up so that I can feel more. Sometimes it's like, I got to slow down. I got to play a little bit. I actually have to resensitize myself. And when we jack up the intensity, we desensitize.
That's just so brilliant and beautiful. That's because you gave him the equivalent of what you talked about on the first podcast is tasting your food, feeling the water on your body, just making out and being with another human being, and the toys have nothing to do. And I bet that was just mind blowing for him.
Well, it paid off the next morning.
Gentlemen, are you listening? Ladies, if you want to lead, are you listening? That is amazing.
Yeah. And I think I love what you just said. If you want to lead, and, you know, gentlemen lead. I am always leading myself. I am always leading myself. And I think that that's another place where we get stuck in this performance thing, right? I have to somehow know something about your plumbing, and I have to be really good at that. And you have to know something about mine, and you have to give me an orgasm. Right? I have to, you know, if one more woman says he couldn't give me an orgasm, it's like that's like a slapping offense, you know. And it's like, it's your orgasm.
Take responsibility for your own orgasm.
Take responsibility for it, and especially, again, this goes together with our aging body issues, right? This whole thing of, can you perform, can you not, right? And we have this unspoken thought bubbles going on when we're sexing with each other. Oh, I don't want to mention, this or that. I want to ask about this. I don't want to, right? It's like, not only are we afraid of our own aging bodies, but I'm terrified of yours, right? I don't want to mention it. I don't want to bring it, I don't want to bring it up. I don't want to ask you anything about it, because then I might, I'll have noticed that something's not working.
Well, actually, the hit I just got is, when you said terrified of somebody else's aging body, if what I'm doing isn't turning them on, then I'm inadequate.
Absolutely.
And it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with, these cars just don't go that distance. And we got to figure out what track this car is going to really fit on.
Exactly.
Wow, that's a huge light bulb and mind blowing thing for me. Is don't take it all so personally. It's not all a reflection on me. And then I have compassion and love, and I'm like, oh wow, I can work with this.
Exactly. And that's also, there's another big piece in here, which is communication. And this is something that I would hope, as we mature, we have more facility with. But one of the things I've learned in my practice is that we don't. And sometimes we're actually worse at it, to be honest, as we get older, and as either as we get more entrenched in relationships. I mean, I am a single woman who's 52 and I'm dating, right? So we could do a whole, next time we do a podcast, let's do it on that. I went out with a guy a couple nights ago, and he did not ask me one question about myself. Not one. We were together for 3 hours.
Man, that's Jacks are better for dating. Ask a question about the person you want to sleep with.
Ask a question. So in some ways, when we're younger, we're actually a little bit better at communicating, because, we're sort of still in that vein of like making friends and right? It's like you have a little bit more facility at that. By the time you get older and you've got your friends and maybe you've got your relationship or whatever, it's like we've lost some of the ability to have, to flirt, to have a challenging conversation, to speak the truth. Like, woo, that's a really, really big one. That happens in midlife a lot. These changes in our libido don't happen at exactly the same time for everybody. We're not always on the same page. I mean, and some of this is true for other stages, but I just want to punctuate in midlife. This is all happening at different times for different people. So you're in a relationship, maybe you've committed to it for, 20, 25 years. And, one partner is climbing the walls because they now want to be, having sex 3 times a day. They might have spent their entire 30s pushing you away, saying, not now, later, I've got kids to deal with. And now all of a sudden they're 40, they're 45, and they're on top of you going like, more, I want more. And the other partner's like, I want less than I ever wanted. Right.
You said, I heard you once say that about men and their libido, there's a reason men in their 40s and 50s start getting shit done. And then what you're telling me at the beginning of this podcast is that's when women start to turn into 20-year-old men. So there is definitely going to be a disconnect there.
There is. And that disconnect can be managed, but communication and telling the truth about it and getting the judgment off of it is the number one most important thing. Because otherwise, the person who's going into a heightened sense of libido is going to be trying to hide that and cover it up. The person who's lower is going to be shut down. They're not going to be able to find a way to connect. And that's where a lot of affairs happen. That's where a lot of dishonesty happens, because they're trying to preserve the relationship by not telling the other person the truth. Meanwhile, not telling the other person the truth ends up damaging the relationship.
Right. Oh, that's so good. So leave us with some final words of wisdom on this subject.
Yeah. I guess the first thing I would say is your orgasm probably isn't where you left it.
Write that
And
down.
right, write that down. And the second thing I would say is that you have more capacity in this area than you realize
Mm,
if you are willing to learn some new and possibly uncomfortable things about yourself and other people.
fantastic. So again, where can people find you if they want to learn more about this?
Yeah, so I will mention my book on Amazon, which I forgot to mention in part one.
So what's the name of the book?
It's called Play Wild, Stay Safe, The Guide to Giving and Receiving by Monica Day. Beautifully, very simple, very accessible, beautiful photographs, but very tasteful. And then you can also find me on my website, monicaday.com. And I do have an online learning series called The Foundations of Aliveness. And the second installment of it is purely on intimacy. So
Wow.
that is the topic from February 6th to the 26th in an online capacity.
That's fantastic. So I can vouch. I've known several couples who before Monica Day and after Monica Day, and the aliveness and the sweetness and the intimacy I've seen on the after has really been beautiful. I've met a lot of people, single people, who have just really come into their own, and you see them come in dressed one way, and then a couple months later, all of a sudden, just owning themselves, looking completely different. So I can vouch for Monica's expertise and just absolutely loving capacity to hold people in this very delicate conversation. I really thank you for spending time with us. I want you to come back because I think we can talk a lot more about this subject. I'm on the edge of my seat. I want to thank you for being here. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I really appreciate it. Again, if you like this podcast, please like it. Please share it. Please tell your friends about it. This is my marketing. And if there's any topics or any guests that you'd like me to interview, I would love those in the comment section. Thank you. I love you, and have a great day.